Welcome, everyone. I'm Rabbi Laura Duhan-Kaplan, Dean of Olive Ordination Program, the Jewish Renewal Seminary, and I am here today with Reverend Kathy Merchant. Kathy, you are the most interfaith person I know, and I know many interfaith people. You are a practicing Buddhist. You are married to an Ismaili Muslim, and your family follows those rhythms. You work as a minister at a Christian church in the United Church of Canada. You are a peace activist. You are founder of the Living Interfaith Sanctuary of the Vancouver area, where people from all different traditions get together to learn, to study, to pray, to support one another. And there's probably about 15 other dimensions to your multi-faith life that I have not even touched on. I am curious, amid the practicalities, how do you think of religion and spirituality in a way that allows you to be so open, so universalistic, and also so respectful of the particulars of every tradition?
Oh, thank you so much, Rabbi Laura. I'm going to ask you to do my bio now whenever I speak somewhere. That was great. Yes, so I heard something a long time ago in my compassionate listening network, where it was a saying that the ocean refuses no rivers. And I love that. And that's always stuck with me. So just this idea that the divine permeates everything, permeates all of us, like myself individually and each person, but also all beings and creation and all of it. And that Hafiz has this saying that ever since happiness heard your name, it's been running through the streets trying to find you. And that's been my experience of the divine mostly, that it is in everything. So there's no need to kind of wall things off to say like, okay, so if I identify as a Buddhist, so I have to practice in this specific way. And I can only read spiritual books that are written by other Buddhists or on Buddhist topics, or I can only do meditations that are kind of under the headline of Buddhism, or like I have to see things in this way and I have to feel very separate. And that my own understanding of interbeing and sort of Buddha nature, like the idea that every person has Buddha nature within them, is kind of another phrase for the divine in my idea that we all can access that at any time. We just have to take some time. We all have that happiness within us. We have that pure self. We have God's presence within us. And then we're all connected to one another and to all of creation. So to me, I actually see my interfaith life as kind of living into Buddhist ideals, of trying to be in harmony with others, trying to understand others, feeling connected to all beings and not seeing myself as a part. And my one of my big spiritual practices is this compassionate listening, which is sort of a blending of Buddhism and certain Jewish tenets, and also some things out of the Quaker tradition, and practicing compassionate listening, where I sort of make space in myself to fully be present and listen to others. I don't always, but I try to do that in my life, in my relationships, but also when I listen to other faith leaders, when I read other faith books. And Christians would say kenosis, where like in order to create things, God had to pull God's self back to make space for others. And I really love that. And I feel like that's a very Buddhist thing, to kind of allow for others and to not take up all the space. So yes, I feel very much in integrity, in my spirituality and in, yeah, like listening, learning, taking part, um, yeah, and learning what I can and finding the divine wherever it shows up.
Yeah, so in that fabulous theological answer, you mentioned interbeing and you gave a nice definition of it. And you also described spiritual practice as something that can happen when you're in the presence of others, in the process of interacting with them. And so often we talk about spiritual practice as something that people do in themselves, by themselves, to prepare for interaction. Could you talk a little bit about your sense of how important it is, or maybe also how challenging it is to be doing spiritual practice in our interactions with others?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, thank you. Yes, I think in that way it's kind of easy having a Buddhist practice because so my own practice is silent meditation. So trying to take time every day where I sit in silence and kind of let the thoughts go by and not get too attached to whatever's coming up. So I can do that in myself, and I find that a lot easier. But then when we're with other people, how do we do that? Like, how do I show up and be fully present for others? So if I'm listening to my spouse or children sharing a story, am I actually listening to them, or am I kind of off planning the next meal or thinking about emails I have to send? Like, am I actually showing up and being present for them? And then when we're around folks who are sharing things that are kind of outside of our comfort level, so if I'm going to other houses of worship or taking part in other services, kind of what's going on in me. Like that for me, it's the same kind of thing that I'm doing in that setting as when I try to do silent meditation. So I see that as a spiritual practice. So am I in a Hindu temple and do I have like an ongoing internal narrative of like, well, that doesn't seem right. Well, wait a minute, they believe that. Well, what's that like? That can't be true. That's so different. Or am I like, oh, this is so interesting. Like, can I find delight? Can I be fully present and kind of open? I can share that I attended the Vancouver School of Theology, which is where I met Rabbi Laura, and it's mostly a Christian seminary, although it does have lots of folks from other faiths there as well. And I was taking the Master of Divinity program, which is usually just for Christian folks, and I would be in classes, and I would be kind of doing that kind of open listening, being fully present, not running like an internal narrative, and listening to what professors were saying. And many times this happened, and I always found it very confusing, where they'd finish saying something, and I'd have another student kind of turn to me and say, now, wait a minute, Kathy, but you're Buddhist. So do you agree with that, or does that seem right? And I would be really thrown off because I wasn't in the discerning part of my head at that time. I was in the taking in being present part of my head. So then I was like, hold on, I wasn't like amassing a list of criticisms here. Like maybe I can find some, but that isn't what I'm doing right now. And yes. And so for me, I do see that as a kind of spiritual practice. And then as a peace activist and someone very devoted to peacemaking, I see sort of the highest, most difficult level of that same practice is how do we sit when we're with others who are expressing things that we disagree with or that we find harmful? Can we still feel connected to the person, or does our feeling of interbeing stop then? Do we want to say, oh, I'm nothing like that? I'm going to differentiate, well, good thing I don't believe those things, or I'm nothing like these hateful people, or whatever our kind of narrative is. Or can we still listen and stay connected? And then I have lots of other things that I would say about why that is worthwhile, but I still see that as kind of the highest version, or the hardest version at least, of that same silent meditation practice.
You can say something about why you think that's worthwhile.
Yes, well, I don't know about others, but I've never changed my mind because someone told me I was stupid. I've never, if I'm expressing something and if people kind of come at me with the like, well, you don't even know what you're talking about. You're the worst. You have to apologize now. Here's a like bullet, like many bullets, list of all the things wrong with what you're saying. I just dig in harder. And all the studies show, I've read many, many studies on this, and this is totally my own experience, that people actually only kind of soften up on some of their harder beliefs when they feel accepted and listened to. And so I don't practice compassionate listening for the sake of getting everyone to change their minds so they become more like me. We have lots of discussions within the compassionate listening community about how that's manipulative. And if people can tell if you're just kind of sitting there waiting for them to agree with you, so you can't be doing it for that reason. But instead, if we do try to find delight, find connection with others, even with people who you feel like you have nothing in common with at all, or who you wish you had nothing in common with at all. But if we kind of live into that and see that they're also a part of us, and if they feel like you're doing that, they're more likely to ease up, and we wouldn't have the kind of polarization that we have now and the kind of endless fighting. And definitely in my own relationships, I'm able to maintain connection, loving connection with people who see things very differently than me. And I think that's beneficial in the world.
Yeah, so many of the things you said are so interesting. I'll go back to just one of them. I spend a lot of time thinking about and trying to practice seeing other people not as representatives of a tradition and not as representatives of a tradition about which I have limited knowledge and lots of stereotypes, but just see them just as a person. But I don't spend quite as much time trying to understand what is the impact on me in a dialogue or a relationship when someone else is seeing me just as a representative of this tradition that, again, they may not know a lot about. I'm thinking of the experience of being a non-Christian at Vancouver School of Theology, where I was a student before I was a faculty member there. And I'm thinking about times when people would say, well, you're Jewish, is this okay? Or you're Jewish, so I have this alternate project for you. And my response would be, well, sure, maybe as a representative of the historic institution of Jewish traditions, I might say that. I might prefer to do that, but I'm here as me, right? I'm just a person. And as a me,
Um,
I have no problem with this assignment or this project or this concept. And it's something that you have to navigate in interfaith dialogue, being there simultaneously as your open self and as a representative of a particular tradition or perspective.
right. No, that's very well said. It's true. Yeah, especially until people get to know you, they do see you in that kind of way. And yeah, and how often do you feel like, well, I guess I have to kind of take the official stance, whatever that is, you know?
Right.
Uh, yeah, my husband, we used to discuss this more. He's from India, and we have dual citizenship with the U.S. And we used to live in the U.S. And he would say that he would try to be as like kind and soft-spoken and all of these things as he could, because his name's Samir, and so folks could tell he was Indian, but their kind of default would be to assume that he was Hindu, which in the U.S., at least at this time, like in the 2000s and 2010s they were more likely, if they were not Muslim, to have less of a problem with Hindus than with Muslims. And he said he kind of wanted them to have a favorable view of him before they found out he was Muslim. And then, so one, so that then they liked him and his life was easier, but also so that then when they found out he was Muslim, it could kind of maybe change the idea they had about Muslims if they had kind of a knee-jerk negative reaction and then be like, wait a minute, well, but Samir's a nice guy, so maybe there are Muslims who are nice, like that sort of thing. Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's a really important detail because we could talk about interfaith on this very high abstract level of, oh, sure, we do this practice in ourselves and we have a universalist theology and, we hold interbeing. But in the intersubjective encounter with other people in the world, not everybody is doing that all of the time. And even these little moments of everyday life can be so fraught.
totally, definitely. And most people aren't. People have all sorts of ideas, all sorts of strange ideas about each other for racial reasons and religious reasons and ethnic reasons. And yes, yeah, no, it takes a lot. So you have to be committed to trying to be a good person, trying to be open, trying to understand others, and you know, yeah, it's a hard, yes. And the times have certainly only gotten harder, unfortunately.
Speaking of, it takes a lot. I was going to ask you how you see your peace work as a kind of engaged Buddhism, but I think you have already been speaking into that. So let me ask you a different question.
Sure.
I know that you have done many kinds of peace work. You've been an observer on the ground in the West Bank in some challenging circumstances. You do everything you can to bring people together for compassionate listening in different groups. You bring peace activists and peace ideas to the attention of large groups of people. Could you say a little bit about your interfaith work and how it can be particularly challenging right now, and how you manage to hold some of the ups and downs of, I'm going to interrupt myself and say it differently.
Okay.
So, you, Kathy, are a person who genuinely desires the well being of every person and every creature.
Yes.
How do you hold that intense yearning, the in a challenging world, doing a piece of work that just makes a dent?
Good question. It's super hard. Super, super hard. I think it is true that I really want the best for all beings. And I'm confused and sad that I think that is not as common a feeling as I would like it to be, or as I think it should be. I've said since October 7th, I've said that trying to do interfaith work feels like that laser room scene in Mission Impossible, where you're trying to get through and it's just lasers in every direction. And so trying to maintain connections with my Jewish friends and my Muslim friends and my Christian friends and navigate conversations, especially as the situation and the topic of Israel-Palestine comes up, is like trying to get through this laser room of like, how do I not re-traumatize anyone? How do I not say anything that makes things worse? How do I maintain these connections? How do I pull myself back enough so that I can listen and be present for other people? It's really hard. I've had Yes, I remember a couple months after October 7th, actually calling Rabbi Laura and a couple other friends and saying like I'm someone committed to peace, but I feel like no one else is right now. And I worry that with the human condition, there's a part of us that kind of builds up towards war and needs to like fight it out until we remember why we want peace in the first place, and then people become open to peace again. And I said, I feel like I'm almost in the wrong generation or something. Like I have to come back in 20 years when people are like, oh, right, war is bad. We should work together. And I remember Rabbi Laura saying, even if it feels like that, it's important that people know that it's still possible to do peace work, even when things are really hard. So, and I can't remember if you use this analogy or if this came from our conversation, but this idea of kind of like beating the peace drum or like the dialogue drum or the connection drum, like just keep that going, even if it seems like no one else wants that. It's valuable to keep doing that. And so I've tried to do that. So I feel very blessed. My church has our church building, and then we also have the Center for Peace, which is a separate building. And I sort of have this, I guess I usually call it blurriness because I work at a church, but I myself am Buddhist. And then I've done all this work with the Jewish and Muslim community, and I'm married to a Muslim. So I kind of try to leverage are building the Center for Peace to be able to do peace programming. So even folks that say I absolutely don't want to go to a church, especially right now, a lot of Jews say I don't want to go to a United Church because of the United Church of Canada's stance on certain things around Israel-Palestine. So I try to set up things in the Center for Peace that live into these kind of dialogue ideals. And it's really hard. And there are definitely other religious leaders who don't particularly want to work with me on stuff right now because they're not happy about the stance I've taken. They feel like I'm not, I don't know, that I don't. support their stance as much as they wish I did. And I've gotten that from people on both sides of the situation. And that's been very sad and painful for me. But I try to beat that peace drum. And I get a lot of meaning from doing things where I can bring people together. And I really see the value in it. And again, I'm not sure why other people don't, seemingly don't. But we can still do it. And I also have a lot of really cool little things that happen that make me happy. Like we have an ongoing thing every month with Women Wage Peace where we show films about women in peacemaking, and we rotate between films that are about women doing peacemaking elsewhere in other places, and then films about women doing peacemaking in Israel, Palestine. And we've kept that going for a year, and that's been really awesome. And a few weeks ago, I had a rabbi reach out and say, I want to bring folks from the synagogue to a mosque for an iftar dinner. And I know you're the person who knows how to do that. And that made me very happy, like to try to be that, like, if people in X religion want to meet people in Y religion, that I'm the one that can help facilitate that. And so I try to do that. I did that, and that made me very happy. And then we had folks in the Muslim community say, we want to do an interfaith panel series, but we aren't sure who should be on the panel. Can you set that up? And I was like, yes, absolutely. And so we did that, and that's very cool. And we're going to keep doing that. And we're going to add a dinner component to it so people get more of a chance to meet each other. So yeah, how do we like find, you got to find joy when you can. How do we kind of cling on? Like, I know the world is the way it is and the news is the way it is. But if I spend 15 minutes a day reading the news, but then I spend 2 hours a day working on an interfaith panel thing, maybe that's enough that can keep me going, you know? And yeah. And I don't know. I think that's what I definitely think that's what I'm called to do. And I feel really blessed that I get to do that. I wish the situation were not so hard. I wish it were different. But I have hope and I try to live into that.
Thank you for saying that. And you don't just have hope as a feeling, but you have hope in those few hours every day that you get to spend in peace work. So it's
Totally.
a doing of hope.
Totally. Yeah.
So
And I know people who read the news for a lot longer than 15 minutes a day. And they're better informed than I am. And if I'm honest, they're more depressed than I am. And I don't know if they have the same like stubborn stubbornness, gonna insist on continuing to do things. So for me, I found limiting my news intake to like, okay, these are the big things, and now I'm gonna dive in to the Peace Train initiative that I'm working on, or my work with Women Wage Peace, or these dialogues, or these different things. That I can keep going because I'm not letting the news just completely like take any joy and happiness out of my life. But I'm also not living in a place where I am daily in like being threatened. So I understand that it's tough times.
it is tough times. I do think that your work makes a difference. And I want people
Thank
watching
you.
this video to know that when you do an event at the Center for Peace, it's not just 10 local peace activists who come or the same 10 people who come every time. It is a major local institution and organization. And when you show a film or have a guest speaker talking about peace and justice work, hundreds of people come.
Yes. And that
And
feels really good. Yeah, we regularly get 90 people each month to watch our films. We have a Peace Talk series that brings in 200 people every other month. In one of these projects I worked on with Rabbi Laura, we actually brought the former Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, to an event to meet leaders. I think it was 19 different leaders around the area. We do get to do some really cool stuff. I got to work with a group that's trying to get Canada to open a Center for Excellence in Peace and Justice. And there were 40 of us that took the train across Canada 2 years ago and met with 11 lawmakers. And we're going to go back this fall. And we had a big rally on Parliament Square. So yes. And through that, I also meet other people who are committed to peace as well. So it doesn't feel like me and two people which feels good. So we do make a difference in that way, and we can't let the bad news around the world take away from that. Yeah.
Yeah, amen. May it be so. And I'll just add, when you were talking about war earlier, you talked about we, meaning we as a human species. I do have a slightly different view of these rhythms of war. I do not think that the we includes the entire human species. I do believe that there are people who initiate war, people who join in the bandwagon for all kinds of reasons: fear, self defense, ideology, lack of any other meaningful employment, depending on the time and the place. And that there's always a part of the we that is doing the kind of peace work that you're doing. So I feel that it is an essential part of the work in the world and human civilization. And I'm just really, really um, pleased and proud of you and grateful to you for doing it.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm going to remember that when I'm feeling really despairing and like, oh, this is the time where everyone is like this, to remember that. So thank you. I
You'll
take
have
that
the
to heart.
recording. You can always turn it on and hear me say, I'm so proud of you and grateful to you.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Laura. It's always such a joy working with you on everything. Thank you.
Thanks so much for speaking to us, Kathy.